Welcome everyone to another Lessons Learned episode. My name is Vincent Veza. I am an author. I'm the founder of HTN, Hidden Treasure Novels Enterprise. I'm the regional representative for the North Carolina Writers Network Metro North chapter. This is one of many lessons that we've shared with viewers, and we're so glad that you could be with us today. And we're also so honored to have with us guest speaker, author, Claudia Reuter, and Claudia is going to share with the audience some lessons that she has learned along the way. An author, an entrepreneur, Claudia, I would turn the stage over to you to share with our viewers some of the lessons you've learned as a writer. All yours, Claudia.
Okay, well, thank you for having me here today. I'm super excited to be able to speak with you. So I know you wanted to go through some lessons learned over the years. And the first one I've been spending a lot of time thinking about is the concept of taking time to rethink existing structures. We all make decisions every day based on the structures that have been set by others, namely the way in which our corporate day is spent from 9 to 5, the way in which the school day is set up from 8 to 3, the time in which you go to, and the journey that people are expected to take through school all the way through higher education and into their corporate experience. And so thinking about the idea that when we think about what's possible, it can be hard to do so, but try to think about what's possible beyond the framework in which you're currently operating. And if you could change something, what would it be beyond what you see today?
Well, thank you, Claudia. Listening to you and thinking about the changes that go through all of our lives, and especially as we're dealing with this terrible pandemic, a lot of people are grappling with, the change that hit them unaware. And I know that you've talked with a number of women who basically, I guess, were the inspiration for a podcast that you established. And I hope you talk a little bit about that podcast and some of the lessons you've learned, that you learned personally, and some of the lessons you've learned from those women who joined your podcast.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to. So I started a podcast not too long ago because I've had a very non-linear career path to get where I am today, so to speak. So I started, post college, I did what most people do and just stepped into the traditional corporate world. And not too long after, I ended up having my first child and stepped out of the workforce for a number of years before realizing that stepping back in wasn't going to be as easy as I thought it was going to be. And ultimately ended up starting a company, which led to a number of different opportunities. And what I realized along the way is that there's a big narrative running, and that you may be familiar with this concept of, there's been a lot of discussion around the idea of lean in. Sheryl Sandberg wrote a book several years ago, 2013, called Lean In. And I'm a big advocate for the concept of leaning in. The idea is that as a woman, you should double down on your career. You should be motivated to achieve great success and be a leader. And then, over time, another narrative has emerged, which is this concept of leaning out. The idea that, hey, we heard Michelle Obama say it, this idea, hey, leaning in doesn't work. People should lean out. All of which I think is actually a false dichotomy. This idea of whether you should lean in or lean out, depending on your family circumstances, going back to the idea of the existing structures, it's all set up as a question based on the idea that the structures we have in front of us are the only choices we have. So I set out to do a couple of things in the last few years. The first was to create a podcast where I interviewed women who had very, very different career journeys and pathways, people ranging from lawyers to CEOs to authors to doctors, and allow them some space to tell what it was like to navigate family and career And often, the stories that are out there are very compartmentalized. You're either talking about your work life or your home life. So I really wanted to create a podcast where people were sharing both experiences. So it's been a really great, we've done 3 seasons now. And the last season, we specifically focused on the impact that COVID was having for women in the workforce and at home.
Wow. Well, I guess that leads us to the third experience from your podcast. You migrated to writing a traditional book, but I'm not quite sure that it's really traditional. And I hope you'll share your experience about that book and about what challenges you faced as you were putting all that material together in your manuscript.
Sure. So I had actually I had put together a proposal for a book several years ago, actually before I started working on the podcast, because I felt like there was an opportunity to help people understand that thinking about entrepreneurship isn't necessarily a get rich quick scheme or something that's going to yield immediate results. And in fact, may actually lead to your business not going in the direction you thought it was going to go. But by taking those steps and by thinking about what's possible, you have an opportunity to rethink and reshape the way in which we work and the way in which we experience our lives. And so I was originally going to title the book, You Can Change the Rules. And working with the publisher at Wiley, we ended up, I'm excited to call it Yes, You Can Do This, because I think the idea is that instead of thinking about entrepreneurship as just a path to build a business or to move things forward, if you realize that most of the startups that are out there, or rather, if you look at most of the things in the corporate experience right now that maybe at the time were considered revolutionary, or that we take for granted now, like having flexible work hours or having casual dress in the office or bringing your pet to work. These were all things that entrepreneurs thought of to attract top talent to their companies. And so I try to encourage people as they're thinking about building a business or thinking about how they can move beyond the lean in, lean out debate and create a business. Think about the different structures you could change as part of that process. And that might look like, instead of worrying about a pet-friendly workplace, what would a family-friendly workplace look like? Or what would it look like to be inclusive of everyone and really drive diversity and leadership in your organization? So the book is really 2 parts. One, it's designed to break down some of the unconscious bias and challenges that women often face throughout their careers, and put that into a description of narrative. It's fictional characters who basically you can see different archetypes of roles that people have in our society. And then each chapter lays out, through their experience, an example of a challenge. And then the second half of each chapter gives you a tactical, practical takeaway and way that you could actually build something in your regular life.
Wow. By the way, I love the book. I read that several times and had so many ideas that I'm trying to share with the women in my life. But I think it goes beyond that, and it really is, there's ideas in there, there are suggestions that apply to men and women. So I really commend you for the book and the work you did there. But I also want to have you share a little bit about the 4th lesson, that you are more than just an author, and of course that's an important thing, but I know you do a number of speaking engagements. There's other ways you reach out to share your message. Could you share a little bit about those with the audience?
Sure. So, part of my work, I work for an organization called Techstars, where I am responsible for accelerators where we make investments in early stage startups. And I'm responsible for what's happening on the East Coast. But part of my role there is to engage with as many different groups of people as I can to help them understand what's possible through entrepreneurship and in other ways. And so actually, even prior to joining Techstars, I was doing a number of speaking events on panels and either being a member of a panel or going out and doing a keynote. I saw you had a picture up of an event I just did last week that was focused on entrepreneurship up in Canada.
Claudia, I have to ask you, in this day of COVID, are you still going out meeting with people in person, or is this all happening on Zoom? How do you handle all that?
Unfortunately, it's all happening on Zoom right now. Pre-COVID, I was doing quite a bit of traveling. I'm excited to be able to see people in person again at some point, but for right now, we're doing everything virtually. I actually just did a panel last week with 3 of my colleagues on another app called Bizaboo, I believe it was called. And so that was for an innovation event. And then the event for Canada was on Zoom. So
oh my, the whole world is becoming a Zoom call.
Yeah.
It is just incredible. Well, I'm honoring the time our audience has been, I hope, really inspired by your ideas and your story. This is part of your story. I know you have so much more to tell. I hope you're going to have additional books coming out. Are there any final words that you have for writers out there, for entrepreneurs out there, for people who would want to be a writer or be an entrepreneur?
I would actually just encourage people, if you want to do something, just do it. I think one of the research items that I uncovered during the process of writing the book was, I was trying to really get to the root of why do we see a difference between, the number of female entrepreneurs that are out there versus male entrepreneurs or people willing to take risks. And there was actually a study that was done a few years ago that showed that young women are more conditioned to be compliant, and that leads to potentially being conditioned to not take risks later in life. So one of the things I just encourage people to do is just, if you have a passion for doing something, just go ahead and get started. And the worst that happens is that you check it off your list as something you actually accomplished. Don't worry about what happens to it. Just get it done. Great
advice, Claudia. And I'm so pleased to let people know that your book is featured on the hiddentreasurenovels.com website. I know it's available through Wiley and on Amazon. So again, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here. I want to thank all of the viewers that are visiting this Lessons Learned episode. Stay tuned. We'll be doing this again next week, same time, same station. Thank you, Claudia Reuter. Have a blessed day. Everyone, have a great day out there and a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.